A few hours later, afternoon, another plane with another 250 military personnel. Their arrival at Air Force Base number 12 in Tijuana, a base just south of the border between the two U.S. ports of entry.
If they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want.
These are the types of individuals that we are targeting. We're removing from communities and that could end up having a stay at Guantanamo Bay before they are returned home to their countries to deal with.
Congress now weighing in on the birthright citizenship battle. The Democrats, the day Trump got inaugurated, said that they would file a lawsuit to oppose his executive order ending birthright citizenship, stopping the practice whereby a person who is illegally in the country has a baby and they claim the baby has citizenship. It's been a practice in this country for whatever reason. I think it is not how the constitutional structure is embodied, and the Democrats sued Trump as soon as that executive order went into effect. This is a response from members of Congress in support of Trump, okay? The state of Washington and others suing Trump, suing the DOJ, Congress now coming to support him, and members of Congress filing this response. It's not just members of Congress. We also have states like Iowa and 17 other states are coming in and saying birthright citizenship, as it's currently interpreted and in practice, let's say pre-Trump, is unconstitutional, is not lawful. Trump's interpretation is in fact correct. Birthright citizenship for illegals is not valid. So we'll read through both those things. We'll see that Mexico is already mobilizing and Kristi Noem is representing the DHS. So let's take a look at this filing. All right, Your Honor, we're here as 18 members of Congress who serve on the Committee of the Judiciary, one of our favorites. Chairman Jim Jordan is leading this with Andy Biggs, Chip Roy, Brandon Gill. We got Troy Niels, Lance Gooden, Victoria Spartz. What's up, Mark Harris, Scott Fitzgerald, Robert Onder, Harriet Hageman, who beat the crap out of Liz Cheney over there in Wyoming, Tom McClintock, Wesley Hunt, Glenn Gruthman, Ben Klein, Russell Fry, Michael Baumgartner, and Bram Knott. Bunch of people all joining in. They say, look, we've got a strong interest in the outcome of this case because Congress, as a co-equal branch of government, wants to uphold the Constitution. And specifically, historical records confirm that the 14th Amendment does not confer citizenship on children of aliens unlawfully present in the United States. Because of this, an alien who seeks political rights as a member of this nation can rightfully obtain them only upon terms and conditions set forth by Congress. But Congress has never granted citizenship to the children of aliens who are not lawfully present, right? This is subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, thus, the other branches are forbidden from conferring citizenship on their own. And the court should deny the state's motion, in this case, it's Washington State, from stopping Trump's executive order from going into effect. All right, they give us the background. The 14th Amendment confers citizenship. Here's what it says. On any person who is both, one, born or naturalized in the United States, and two, this is the part they always like to dot over and forget about, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Each requirement matters. The first clause has been construed to exclude those born in U.S. territories despite being literally in the United States. And jurisdiction invokes the historic doctrine of licentia, meaning a person must owe direct and exclusive allegiance to the sovereignty, and in turn, the sovereign, in other words, the state, must consent to the person's presence. Now, notably, the jurisdiction clause does not say that a person must be subject to the laws of the United States, right? But it's rather the jurisdiction, and this is the distinction that matters, even in modern case law. Jurisdiction is a word of too many meanings, says another case, so it should come as no surprise that the meaning of the term of that word that was written 160 years ago would be nuanced, okay? Now, as the DC Circuit has held, birthright citizenship does not simply follow the flag either. Rather, the evident meaning of the words subject to the jurisdiction thereof is not merely subject in some respect or degree to the jurisdiction, but must be completely subject to their political jurisdiction, right? It's not like because we can put you in jail for breaking the law that you're acquiescing. It's saying that you're owing us direct and immediate allegiance. You're here with permission. Now, there is widespread agreement that the jurisdiction clause means that children born in the United States to ambassadors or to invading soldiers would not get citizenship. The best reason for this is because they don't owe allegiance to the United States, rather than, as they say, because those groups have immunity from federal law, right? They're saying, oh no, they have immunity in a different part of the law. But it's actually more basic than that, right? They have allegiance to another sovereign. As explained in more detail, there's a wealth of support for this argument that also applies to those children who are illegally present, because they, like ambassadors, do not owe total allegiance to the United States. In fact, they're citizens of their home country, and they owe at least divided allegiance to them. And they also have birthright birthright citizenship of their own in many instances. Allegiance is also reciprocal, and we need to talk about that. That person must be present with the consent of the sovereign. And this case comes up all the time. Wong Kim Ark, they say, oh, look at this. They granted a person who was born to immigrants citizenship, but they were here lawfully. But illegal aliens and their children are present in the United States without consent, okay? Wong Kim Ark was born to parents who had lawful residency in the state. Early English case law also supports this concept of total allegiance and its role in citizenship. And even the senators who drafted and debated this stated that children of aliens or others owing allegiance to anybody else would not receive citizenship. That understanding extended for decades after the ratification of the 14th. And some modern scholars also argue that the core purpose of the citizenship clause was to include grant of citizenship to all those lawfully in the United States. Now, because the 14th Amendment does not confer citizenship on the children of illegally present aliens, and because Congress has not done so by statute, the other branches cannot confer that on their own. The executive order here that Trump put in place is properly in law and should not be enjoined. In Calvin's case, which the Supreme Court later cited, Lord Coke, okay, this is back from our English friends in 1608, explained what subject to the jurisdiction means. He noted that it is nec calum nec solum, neither the climate nor the soil, but the allegiance and the obedience that makes one subject to the laws, not the fact that you just drop a baby geographically on some soil somewhere. Jurisdiction is not just turning on simply the territory or whether you're subject to the laws. Like, yes, we enforce the laws. If you're invading, we're going to try to keep you out. But by breaking the law or like being prosecuted by the law, it doesn't make you suddenly citizenship worthy, right? When your baby comes out. As the DC Circuit has explained, it means within obedience or allegiance, right? Allegiance to the king. Other professors have explained that as well. And we've talked about this in the 14th Amendment, explaining the history of the jurisdiction clause begins with the Civil Rights Act in 1866, which stated if you're not subject to any foreign power, right? And excluding Indians and those other cases. They say the plaintiff is relying on the Supreme Court case, right? So this is kind of the main anchor for their arguments, which is Wong Kim Ark. Their reliance is misplaced. The court tied allegiance to permission and consent to the parents being permanently present in the United States. Illegal aliens are not present with the consent of the United States, and it makes little sense to rely on Wong Kim Ark. That occurred, and that involved the parents who enjoyed permanent domicile and residence, right? They were allowed to be here, and that's why they found the way that they did. The court concluded that foreigners owe the requisite allegiance to the United States when we allow them to be here permanently. They acquiesce. One need not decide whether that was fully correct on that score, but it still resolves the question here, right? Some people also say that this should be extended further. It's like, no, your baby's not a citizen until you're a citizen. If you're just here temporarily, your baby's here temporarily with you. That's not what Wong Kim Ark says. If you're here lawfully, even though you're not a citizen, you have a baby citizen. So you can move that line in whatever direction you want to. They want to move it more towards illegals even, right? Are here subject to, but that's not what Wong Kim Ark said. And so the reason I keep hammering on that point is because we don't need to undo a bunch of precedent. In other words, the Supreme Court just needs to say, yeah, we'll just keep Wong Kim Ark as status quo. There you go. And allow it to ride. They say Wong Kim was fully correct because the test it imposes still resolves the question here. It's about consent and permission to be here, and illegals don't have it. The executive order at issue here also excludes children of lawful permanent residents. And we reread Trump's executive order, and it's in compliance with the 14th Amendment. Plaintiffs rely on a few broad statements, but ironically, the opinion itself cautioned against these statements in the case itself. And others in the dissent, with the sole dissenter, said that Wong should have never become and is not a citizen because of other things. So modern scholars have signaled that they agree with this jurisdiction clause. They give us some other scholars. Professor Eistricher talks about it. Modern jurisprudence has also addressed this. The DC Circuit held just a few years ago that the concept of allegiance is in the 14th Amendment. And so other judges are talking about it. They say their arguments don't hold up. And so for these reasons, birthright citizenship is about allegiance, not just being subject to the laws. And so deny their request to stop Trump's executive order. So I think a very good argument and one that hopefully will stand. 17 states plus Iowa also got in on the fun. It says for the past 4 years, disastrous immigration policies transformed every state into a border state by flooding them with illegals, criminals, gang members, ISIS terrorists. Cost states a lot of money. Allowing virtually anyone born on American soil to become citizens creates bad incentives for illegal immigration and immigrants. And the states are not happy about it. Iowa, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, many others on the list. They tell us the 14th Amendment and the clause explains subject to the jurisdiction thereof. thereof. Trump issued an executive order. We know what it says. Removing the incentive for illegals to come here and have babies is important and it's vital. And so the states say, let the executive order stand. They say that the citizenship clause, Washington state, is a bright line and nearly universal rule, which has been continuously and unanimously approved. They say that is wrong. And they're trying to overrule 150 years of consensus. Plaintiffs are wrong about the universal acceptance about this. In fact, it's actually unsettled. Academic scholars continue to hotly contest the meaning of this. Many scholars who've studied this have reached the same interpretation of the executive order. And after carefully examining the text, one scholar concluded, he said, non-immigrant and illegal aliens are not similarly considered part of the American people. They're not subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States. They're not entitled to birthright citizenship. More arguments in support. This is a law review article from Texas. This is from the Civitas Institute. This is from Patrick Charles, quoting the 14th Amendment. It's not universal. Here's another case from the 7th Circuit. Some say that there are cases where judges say it makes no sense, your interpretation. And so all you need to do is look at the text. They say, here's what it says. The entire clause must have meaning. It cannot be presumed that any clause should not have effect. That's why they wrote it, to give it meaning. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof does not mean, as they say, that you must comply with U.S. law. Like, that's not what that means. You break the law, or you must comply with the U.S. law and you break it, and then suddenly you have the privilege of having a baby in the country. That doesn't make any sense. So in other words, you're encouraging people to break the law so they get a benefit of having a baby that's a citizen, which is a very great benefit. Just ask the people who spend all the years to get it done. Plaintiffs contend that the only individuals excluded are those who are not in fact subject to the jurisdiction, which are diplomats, right? Anybody else can just drop a baby off and they're good. But plaintiffs' interpretation brings two problems into consideration, and they detail them there, and contrasting it against Native Americans and more. But the Supreme Court actually interprets in favor of Trump's order, explaining their first decision on this was Elk versus Wilkins, and they were explaining what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means. But Wong Kim Ark repeatedly emphasized its facts involved lawful permanent residents, right? Even stressed this, so long as they're permitted to be here, then we'll allow the citizenship. Another useful contrast can be found where the Supreme Court found that a minor daughter living in the U.S. for 9 years did not automatically become a citizen when her father was naturalized because she was in the country illegally. The court cautioned that naturalizing parents affects minors only if dwelling in the U.S. to show a boundary line. Trump's executive order actually reduces harm to the state. So now we'll get into some public policy. Besides being wrong on the law and constitution, this will cause birth tourism to increase, and it's going to attract illegal immigration. As the founder of the drafter of the 14th Amendment noted, the amendment was not to establish new rights, but to protect and enforce those which belong to every citizen already. The costs surrounding these births are massive. Trump's order is going to reduce the cost. We don't want this to increase illegal immigration. Some women desperate to give birth in the United States cross the border the day they deliver their baby. See how that works? Just get across quickly because she's coming. One border hospital administrator witnessed mothers about to give birth walk up to the hospital, still wet from swimming across the river in actual labor, dirty, wet, and cold, here to have a child in the U.S. It's sick that we cause women to do that to themselves, like incentivizing this. It's sick. Some women even give birth at the border just minutes after illegally crossing. Attracting illegals here imposes significant costs on the states. For example, between 225,000 and 250,000 U.S. births in 2023, about 7% of all births and more than births in any state besides Texas or California were to illegal immigrants. Look at that number. That's a lot. Michael Dogan, up to 250,000 born to illegals. Massive numbers. States bear many costs associated with this. Texas estimates they spend 30 to 38 million. Many others say more. This one says up to 90 million. Lifetime fiscal drain, $68,000 maybe per illegal. And that does not include the cost of every extra crime that they commit. Total cost for states is enormous. When healthcare costs, public education, welfare, other state programs, and more, $115 billion each year because of illegal immigration. Almost a full Ukraine. Unbelievable. For a state such as Iowa, the cost of illegal immigration has been more than $100 million for decades. And to be honest with you, I think this number is like probably, 10 times that. Babies born in America to illegal aliens will also impose costs to states throughout their lives. These babies likely would have been born in a different country, but as American citizens, they may participate in state welfare, get state health care, state driver's license, incur costs from each of those programs, then, education and more. Birth tourism is also booming. Some estimate that between 20,000 to 26,000 birth tourists visit the United States each year. Some pay $100,000 to come here and get their kids born here. Criminal activity has accompanied this as well. Federal prosecutors recently obtained conspiracy and money laundering convictions for birth tourism companies. States have been been and will continue to be harmed by this. And so for these reasons, you should find that what Trump did with his executive order is lawful, totally in purview of Supreme Court and American precedent under the 14th Amendment, and fined accordingly. Now, at the border, we can see, meanwhile, we have Mexico is agreeing to build the wall, but they're sending humans to create a human wall. And here is what the report looked like as they're mobilizing now.
Just before 9:30 Tuesday morning, 250 Mexican National Guard troops arrived in Tijuana. This video from our reporting partners, Televisa. A few hours later, after noon, another plane with another 250 military personnel. Their arrival at Air Force Base number 12 in Tijuana, a base just south of the border between the two U.S. ports of entry.
If they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want.
The troops' arrival comes just a day after President Trump announced a pause to the 25% tariffs on Mexico.
Nice. So they're there. We're happy to see it. Otherwise, those 25% tariffs are coming back quickly. Here's Kristi Noem. She was saying the rule of law is not optional in the United States of America. If people want to come here, you will obey our laws. In just days, President Trump has delivered on his promises. And here, let's listen to her say it. She'll do it better than me.
The process will be followed, and having facilities at Guantanamo Bay will be an asset to us, and the fact that we'll have the capacity to continue to do there what we've always done. We've always had a presence of illegal immigrants there that have been detained. We're just building out some capacity. So we appreciate the partnership of the DOD in getting that up to the level that it needs to get to in order to facilitate this repatriation of people back to their countries. So remember that Guantanamo Bay, clearly by this president, has said that it will hold the worst of the worst, that we are going after those bad actors. This last week I was in New York City. We were going after people that had warrants out for their arrest on murders and rapes, assaults, gun purchases, drug trafficking. In fact, we had a member of TDA that was one of the ringleaders that we picked up that week had been trying to buy grenades. These are the types of individuals that we are targeting, we're removing from communities, and that could end up having a stay at Guantanamo Bay before they are returned home to their countries to deal with.
All right, so plans are happening to make sure that the deportation continues on, and Kristi Noem looking fabulous while she's doing it.